So here we go. It's the weekly podcast for 827 Tuesday Sprint Zone. And we've got the new 360 camera today, which should make the viewing a little bit different. And let's just see how it goes. So I just got done doing a pull at the front up prospect with Matthew Michaels. And we're sitting at the front, heading up for the sprint. So I'm thinking to myself, I don't want to be up here at the front. So I was checking the power on the way up Prospect, and I was pushing between like 210 and almost 300 watts, just trying to stay next to Matthew. And I mentioned it to him, and he backed it down a little bit, so I got some respite. Anyway, here we go. So I pull off the front because I'm tired, and I'm not going to drag these fools all the way up Prospect. It was a windy day and the wind coming straight out of the east. So I knew that this was definitely going to keep everyone together. And I was in no mood or form to go up the front and blow myself up. I guess Matthew was like riding really strong because I think he and Dean already did like 25 miles before this. So they are feeling fresh and frisky and ready to throw it down. So I'm sitting in, life is good. I see a lot of the big men at the front. It's Joel, Carey, Dean, Matthew Michaels, and I think Kurt Wheat and Brandon up there in the black. Maybe punching over his weight a little bit, but he's up there. Definitely a good move. The wind's slightly out of the south, so you really want to be off to the left to get a little bit of shelter. And that looks like that's something some of the guys aren't doing. Now, if you're a big guy and you need a lot of cooling, and I'll do this sometimes, is actually sit in the wind because, as I always tell my boys, the big block needs to be cooled. So we're heading up. Matthew's keeping a good pace. It's not real fast because of the headwind. And I wish I had my telemetry. Unfortunately, my Garmin died, and I didn't use my other Garmin, and so I didn't have any telemetry for this. But if anyone's got a file for this, like Carrie, you've got power, you could toss me your GPX file and I could render that in here. Maybe I'll do that at some point. So we've crested the top of the hill. Nothing's really changed as far as position. People are just sitting on Matthew because he's the big man. Dean in good position, and I'm kind of hanging back because the corner's coming up, and I'm not quite certain how well these guys are going to corner. I always have a little trepidation with people who don't have a lot of experience, and all it takes is one person to do something wrong. And as far as being safe, I'm gonna have to burn a few extra matches, staying maybe a foot or two back, but it's better than finding myself on the ground all splattered. So into the corner, it looks pretty good. Joel and the boys cornered pretty well. I gained a little bit. So here's where the 360 camera is coming in fun. So I can see behind for the first time to see what everybody else is doing, which is really kind of cool. I see Kurt there. We got Tony, JVP. It looks like Eric. I can see Ilka back there. Looks like we got Greg Lutz. And everyone makes that corner pretty nicely. And it's still game on, but no one's really doing anything yet. And you can kind of see that people are working, but they're just waiting for Matthew to do something, which, at this point, I'm okay with. I had a big workout the day before, lunges, come on these body work classes, crunches, and all that, and my glutes and quads are just tired. So I'm happy with where things are now. See Brett coming back. I see Ian looks like he's drifting back, punching above his weight, so he knows where he needs to be. But everyone's still pretty tight here. So there's a car back, and it's been back there since pretty much when we came off of Prospect, but he didn't feel like he wanted to go around, which is kind of cool when he wasn't angry. I didn't hear anybody call car back, but maybe people just aren't passing that up, and that's a problem. People need to be passing that whole car back thing up. They might hear it and they think the person in front of them hears it. No, they don't. So looking behind, there's Tony in good position. There's Brandon starting to fall back a little bit. He's slightly on the wrong side for some shelter. JVP looking good. I suspect at this point maybe Carey went to the front and threw it down, put a little surge in there, but whatever it is, it's not quite enough to string everybody else out. I see Rick Lutz out there by the yellow line, and I'm like, dude, why are you always out there? You don't need to be out in the yellow line, out in the wind like that. It's a bad habit you're getting into because you're going to race like that, and you're going to just be pushing way too much wind. So back up front, the boys are throwing down and fairly strung out. It looks like Tony and Matthew Michael. So at this point, I'm suspecting it carries at the front. And with the wind, I was guessing he was probably throwing down, I would say, the better part of 350 to 400 watts for that little surge that he put in there. Definitely stringing people out. I was thinking to myself, oh my goodness, that's a hard effort. And wondering if he was going to be able to recover. But I know he's had some pretty good results in like the last race that he did, so he's definitely feeling stronger these days. And from looking at some of the Strava, and he's definitely like an up and comer. Anyway, so I'm kind of sitting in, at this point my Garmin was actually working and looking down. It was like 280, 250 watts. And then we kind of sit in and coast to nothing. And I believe things are starting to slow down a little bit. I think Carey's probably going to come off the front, and we're going to see if anybody's going to take over. And I think probably Brett does at this point. It's hard to say, but people are happy. Yeah, so there's Carey. He's pulling off, drifting back, looking back to see how things are going. Brett, I believe, went to the front to keep up, or maybe it wasn't. It was somebody up there. I think it was Brett. No, but I see Brett back here, so I don't know who was up front. But whoever it was kind of took over very nicely. So now we come to that little hill. Uh, it's always a little effort. I'm always like, 400 or 500 watts just on this little grade, just trying to keep with who's ever up front. But with the wind today out of the east, it's definitely keeping everybody together because there's no separation, there's no selection whatsoever at all. So JVP hasn't come to the front, not doing anything. There's Carey. You can see he's a little bit gassed, but good for the over-unders. He has settled in, and he's found his place. I'm thinking JVP was tactically thinking, I'm going to sit behind Carey and get more rest. That's cool, that's all good. Back to the front, and I see Joel sitting in there pretty nicely. Matthew Michaels. It looks like there's Dean at the front, and he's throwing it down now. I wish I had some telemetry here, but the pace has definitely picked up, and he's going really hard. You can see how strung out everything is, and I'm hanging in there pretty easily because let's admit it here. Even if I'm tired and my legs are a little bit sore, and with a headwind like this, I'm just sitting in. And like earlier, I was having a conversation with Dean. He was like, "Hey, I'll give you a lead out, like to attack early on." And I'm thinking to myself, that's crazy talk. There's no way a little guy like me with 3 miles to go with a lead out, even if I get a gap, is going to be able to hold off all the big men. So we just put that one aside. Everyone's still together as we expected. It looks like Carey's recovered pretty nicely. Kind of looking at the interesting angle of the editing I did with the video. Yeah, I didn't want to get my helmet in the screen too much, so I kind of changed the optics. It's a little bit wonky, but I think I like it. So there's Tony coming back from the front. Tony's sitting out in the wind too, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm not certain why that is, but he surges up. I don't know if he's tired or whatever. Why he drifted back only to go back up front because I don't think there's a move coming just yet. And Carey's seasoned enough that I'm watching him even from the back, and I'm like, if there was something serious going, he'd be around, but he's not. And then Tony just drifts back, and he's still out in the wind. Like he should have pointed to get in the line, but to go back that far, that's just questionable. So everyone's letting Matthew go to the front. I mean, he's the big engine, and into the wind, he just has such a big advantage, and people are just happy. So I think I recall we're doing maybe like 250 watts, and I'm thinking to myself, well, I haven't been to the front since Prospect. It's time for me to go do a little work. So I'm at the front, and let's see what happens behind me. And this is one of the angles. I can never see this when I'm actually there, but oh, so that's what that looks like. So Carey has wisely followed me, and it looks like here comes the move where I get swarmed. So it looks like Dean has recovered, and then there's Greg, and then JVP rears his head for the first time, and they punch it. And at this point, I don't really have it. So Dean had come by and said, "Hey, Steve, get on my wheel." And that would have been cool, but I was already doing like 350 watts. Now he kind of interrupted me a little bit. He should have come off on the left because the wind was coming slightly out of the south. So I had to go around him. He would have gotten more shelter going down the left side, but hey, c'est la vie. So I close up on Matthew, and I think I'm doing pretty well. And then there's Carrie, and then the acceleration that Matthew put on. I was like, I am not going with that. So maybe Carrie will pull me up. Looks like Carrie has his done for the day, so I'll just kind of sit in here for a while. Rick finally comes up. There looks like Justin. The guys who were sucking wheel back there looking for their sprint. There's Kurt looking good. I'm surprised he wasn't up there. And there's Eric. And those guys may have done 30 or 40 miles before they even got here because those guys, I know what they can do. And either they were trying to be tactical today or, Eric's pretty light, so maybe he was just being smart. So anyway, I'm sitting on carry. Got no thoughts about going around. My heart rate's probably at my max. My legs are a little bit sore, so I don't really have that anaerobic, fast twitch type 2 ability right now to react to this surge. But carry's like bringing these guys back. So I'm like, we'll sit here for a little bit, see what we can do. We're definitely not going to go for it. I mean, the big men have checked out up the road, and I'm just hoping to hang in there. Nice little congratulations there. Cool that Kerry, that congratulated Greg on his little attack. Dean, there's Brett. It's like Joel comes up. Pretty much this is the end of it. Couldn't see who won that one. I'm going to guess it was JVP because he was probably the freshest. Sat on all the wheels. Tactically, well done. Well done. Got to give it to my teammates. I guess I was the only guy from old school didn't have a kit on today. Felt kind of guilty about that. Uh, but we didn't actually ride as a team. Not that we should be using like team tactics on like any of these things, but definitely not coordinated at all whatsoever to any kind of drive, any kind of coordinated effort. Would have been fun to do a lead out train where Matthew, myself, Tony, JVP just go to the front, do the lead out thing, maybe designate Matthew to be the guy who's going to win, and see if we can do something fun here. Anyway, looks like a good time was had by all. Peace.